All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. And we begin this hour of the show with a story that comes out of a question asked by one of you. Now, we were having a discussion last week on this program about the Quebec healthcare system. We were telling you about a story of a Montrealer, and she died of breast cancer. And she was told she was too young to have breast cancer. And she had serious delays in getting the imaging, the testing that she needed, eventually dies of breast cancer. So I thrown that question out to our listeners about if you ever worry that the Quebec healthcare system will let you down. And we got a note from a listener, and they said, Elias, what would be great is if you could cover medical malpractice and how the system works in Quebec. Let's say you want to sue and you want to go down that path. Now, navigating the legal system can be daunting, and especially when it comes to something as serious as medical malpractice. If you believe you've been a victim of a medical error in Quebec, the process of filing a lawsuit can seem overwhelming. So today we're going to break that down and how you sue for medical malpractice in Quebec. Jonathan Gottlieb joins us on the line. He's a personal injury medical malpractice partner at Kugler Kandestin. He's on the line. Jonathan, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So let me ask you first, I guess what constitutes medical malpractice in Quebec? And when it comes to Quebec Canadian law, what constitutes malpractice?
Right. So medical malpractice is the umbrella field for any sort of medical error that could lead to serious consequences on your health and, of course, on all other aspects of your life. And so there are various types of medical malpractice. You could have a physician error. You could have hospital negligence. Any healthcare professional could be subject to a potential lawsuit. It really depends on the type of circumstances and the incident at play.
So what do you need to do if you're someone, whether it's for you or it's for a family member, and you feel, there's been a mistake, something's happened? What do you need to be thinking of? What do you need to do in those situations?
So the first step is really to determine whether you have a case. And of course, I say that it's very difficult for somebody to know if that's the case. But the first step is whether you have a case. And to do so, you need to contact a lawyer specializing in medical malpractice. It's very difficult to navigate the system without having somebody in your corner with experience and knows how it works. And that lawyer, that person, such as myself, would ask for a copy of your medical records. Would get a copy of all your medical records from all the different places where you were seen or where you received care, and would then ultimately get a chronology or a summary of the incident, and then ultimately contact a medical expert to determine whether there is fault or negligence. If you have a typical personal injury case, and I handle those as well, where somebody falls on stairs or there's something falls from a building, it's pretty obvious to know whether something went wrong or not. But in medical malpractice cases, it's not that obvious, and you always need an expert opinion. So those are briefly the three steps.
And how do you do you have to collect your own evidence as well? Obviously, you get the medical files and those kind of things, but do you need to start collecting evidence on your own on top of that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. We always tell the clients, or I always tell the clients, prepare a detailed chronology of everything that happened. And that includes any pre-existing health issues from the moment you went to the hospital or the clinic all the way until your diagnosis or whatever the consequences were. And then that, with the medical chart, with the help of an expert, we're usually able to piece together what happened. And then the what happened isn't enough. Sometimes there are risks that happen in procedures. There are things that go wrong without necessarily giving rise to a case. Other times, the fault is clear. The medical professional did not act appropriately or acted negligently, and then there's a case. And so by piecing together with the client version of events, sometimes a family member's version of events, combined with the chart, we're usually able to piece together what happened, and with the help of an expert, we can determine whether it's a case or not.
We're with Jonathan Gottlieb, a personal injury medical malpractice lawyer. Now, Jonathan, I think we're bombarded by a lot of pop culture movies and TV from the United States.
Yeah.
And we know in the States they're a litigious society, and boy, do we see lawsuits. Medical malpractice, somebody gets millions of dollars. What do we need to know about the Quebec and Canadian system when it comes, if you are serious about going through with a case like this, what you can expect the rest of the way, especially when it comes about to getting restitution, to getting a payout?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. No, we're not in the States, and we don't have $100 million judgments or something that you would see on movies or even in reality. But we do have a very comprehensive system that allows victims to be compensated for what they actually go through. You're entitled to damages for the suffering component of what you went through, but you're also entitled to other impacts on your life. If you're not able to work, if you need care. I give the example of an obstetrical error of a baby case where there's an issue with the delivery and that baby's going to need care for the rest of their life. So our damage awards can be significant, but we don't have jury trials in Quebec, and we don't have punitive damages for most cases in Quebec. So our awards are never as high as the ones you might see in a movie or in the States.
What challenges do victims of medical malpractice typically face in the legal process here?
So that's a good question. So the first challenge, I'd say, is it's typically somebody in a very difficult situation to begin with. So it's somebody who has gone through something, whether there's a negligence or not, but which has had a major impact on their body and on their life. So it's already in a difficult situation. The other issue is that it can be a long process, and that can be daunting. People want resolution quickly, and I can totally appreciate that. But the process takes time, especially if it's a larger claim. The other thing is, claimants need to know that their life will be subject to a certain degree of questioning because they're making a claim based on their own condition. But typically clients understand it. But the upside typically outweighs the challenges. And if someone has a major malpractice case and they need care or they're not able to work or care for their loved ones, well, they're entitled to compensation and they'll go through the process. And in the end, it's hopefully worth it for them. And the benefits outweigh the challenges.
Can you sue for a loved one who's passed away? Let's say you lose, God forbid, someone in your family.
Excellent question, and I have to say I've probably handled 10 to 15 cases like this, and they're all extremely tragic. But yes, for a loved one, a spouse, a parent, God forbid, a child, it happens. And yes, you can sue for the sadness and all the harm that comes from that incident. And if you are financially dependent on that person, a spouse, for example, you can also sue for the financial impact that death would have on you. And this includes, siblings can file proceedings, parents, children. There's no set list, but of course, the closer the relationship, the more significant the claims. But yes, those cases are very tragic, especially when they involve younger people.
How do you make the determination with your clients as to whether or not a case is worth going forward on?
So again, these are great questions. The first question, of course, is there fault on behalf of the physician or the hospital or the medical professional? We're not in the business of taking proceedings against physicians and just making wild allegations that can't be substantiated. So we won't take a claim unless some medical expert has told us there is a case. And the second criteria, and it's an unfortunate one, but the case has to be worth the investment of time and money and commitment in order to be worth it. There are sometimes cases that are not worth very much, and then the clients have to consider, is this worth taking the several years that it takes to get down the road? But for more significant claims, or God forbid death claims, or more significant claims, it's usually worth it. And the clients usually understand that it's a process, and we guide them through it every step of the way.
Is that something in Quebec and Canadian law? Like, let's say, it's, I don't want to use the word serious, but, it's not death, it's not a debilitating thing, but there was a mistake made where it comes down to it. You're going to spend so many years in court. It's going to cost you so much in legal fees. And what the Canadian system would give you, or the Quebec system would give you, even if you win your case, just doesn't work out?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes, listen, whether there's a case is question A, but what is the case worth is question B. And if you have a case that's worth a small amount because the consequences are not that significant, fortunately for you, the consequences are not that significant, then it might not be worth it. But there are always other avenues. You can make a complaint to the College of Physicians. You can make a complaint to the Ombudsman. Those don't offer compensation, but they will allow you to get to the bottom of what happened. Or there's always small claims courts. You can claim up to $15,000 in Quebec in small claims court. You don't need an attorney. You can handle it on your own. But it's very difficult to advance these cases without some kind of professional assistance, just because of how complex they are.
Who are you suing, by the way? Is it the institution, or do you have to sue like individual doctors, nurses, staff?
So doctors are sued individually, and they are insured by the Canadian Medical Protective Association, and that's the umbrella insurer for physicians. Where if the error is not a different type of professional, but not a physician, so it could be a nurse, someone else in the hospital, those claims are made to the hospital, which is now under the umbrella of Santé Quebec. So basically, if a nurse commits a fault, you would sue the hospital. But if a physician commits a fault, you would sue the physician by name. That's the distinction.
And let me ask you this, based on your experience in your line of work, how common is this type of thing in Quebec?
There are a lot of medical mistakes that take place. What's unfortunate is not the victims don't always know that a mistake took place. You wouldn't necessarily always know what happened to you. Especially for an example you've raised in a death case, unless that there's a family member involved. But there are quite a lot of cases. I mean, we get consulted all the time about potential medical malpractice cases. But again, there has to be fault. The case has to be significant enough to be worth the time and commitment to go through the process. And so, for example, our firm, we could only accept maybe 1 in 10, just to give you an idea, because somewhere along the line there might be an issue with proving fault of the physician, with the causation, whatever the case may be.
Jonathan, listen, I think we could talk about this for much longer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, radio gives us a time limit here, but thanks for joining us. And I think we have a lot of listeners who have been paying attention over the last few minutes. Maybe you can come back another time. That'd be great.
It was my pleasure. Anytime.
Jonathan Gottlieb is a personal injury medical malpractice partner at Kugler Kandestin.